Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering from ELD's Time Vault Games Discord, as we're playing live over the internet. We've got Matt, who's definitely going to be on Aluren. He's been putting up some great results with that. Versus Heather, who I'm not sure what we're going to see. It could be Goblins, could be Phoenix, could be Death and Taxes. Oh, she's taken some air out of those sleeves, so this could be something new that I haven't seen. New sleeves, usually an indicator of something spicy about to happen when you're playing Legacy. Heather's got some options, mostly with the non-blue duels is what we've seen her brewing with. And then some mono-colored decks as well. And I am going to go ahead and skip forward till we get our opening hands. Alright, here we go. Ponder for Matt off of a Tundra. Versus an unknown deck. And it is Goblins, alright. So Mountain Aether Vial. And that is getting Dazed. A card that's got some extra synergy with Baron. A creature that I've been putting a little bit of thought into, just considering the fact that the deck used to run Dream Prowler. I think Baron probably ends up being the better option. A second land now for Heather. Matt going to be behind a turn thanks to the Daze. Aether Vial now. Getting Force of Will, pitching Oko. A card that, to be fair, isn't at its strongest in the Goblins matchup. I've seen plenty of times where Oko either gets run over or just doesn't have any quality targets for his elking ability outside of, the slower approach of trying to make a food and elk it. I mean, it can actually be tough to get together versus Goblins. It can be so aggressive. Not to mention Munitions Expert potentially doing significant amounts of damage. Ooh, and Goblin Pile Driver being cast. We see a hard cast Daze here. No Ice Fang Codal being flashed in. And sadly, his blue mana symbol a little bit of a liability here. That's not going to allow it to block Goblin Pile Driver. However, it can keep this Goblin Lackey at bay for now. And Oko. And Decision Time. Actually going to go ahead and elk now. And this is a dangerous situation. If Heather can clear this elk, this game could get out of control very, very quickly. She adds a Rishadan Port to the board. And a Pashalik Mons, turning everything sideways. It's going to be a couple of damage there to Matt. It's going to be 3-4 damage. And now Pashalik Mons becomes an elk. Gilded Goose comes down as well. Making a food which can easily become an elk later. And I'm not loving that attack, losing that Goblin Lackey. Pile Driver, a significantly worse option now. Elk and Pile Driver turning sideways. Got to imagine this elk is going to be blocking the Pile Driver. And 3 damage coming in. I believe Matt down to 11. And Pyrokinesis clearing the board. And during the upkeep, Rishadan Port activating Brainstorm. Matt already has a fetch land on board. And just very much favored from this board position. It's going to take a lot for Heather to get back into this game, as those Elks are going to do some heavy lifting with an empty board. Just as I was talking about Oko not being an MVP in this match, he is doing some work. If he can stick around, to be fair, he is going to be quite strong. It's just not a given in any way to say that Oko is going to be able to stick around when you're facing off against these Goblins. And now Oko's food-making ability can become very relevant, getting him outside of range, getting Matt outside of range of potential lethal from these Sling Gang lieutenants. Or actually just elking the 1/1. All right. So Baron going to come down and bounce a token. And Sling Gang Lieutenant has been turned into a 3/3. Oh, wow. Wow. All right. Baron actually bouncing Oko. And Matt going to be replaying the Oko to make a food and get that card draw out of Baron. Feels a little bit like desperate times there. I believe he's down to 9. Heather considering her options here. Just going to swing for 3. Going to preserve these 1/1 tokens for now. 3 damage does come in. Matt down to 6. Another food turned into an Elk. And now Recruiter of the Guard to be able to grab an Ice Fang Codal. This one will be able to trade with an Elk. And Matt kind of creating value, going wide here. Goblin Warchief. There are 3 blockers. So Heather can only push through 2 damage here. I believe that's going to put Matt down to 2. So we've got a Ice Fang that's going to take out an Elk, a Beast that can take out a Goblin Pile Driver, and Baron. Oh, there's actually 4 blockers. Baron's going to be able to trade with the War Chief. Oh, opting not to. Keeping War Chief alive, that's somewhat risky, but it looks like Euro is going to completely offset the danger as he comes back and gains 6 life and likely pushes this game out of reach. Matt tapped out. I believe Heather's hellbent at this point. And with only 4 mana, there's not like a top deck Muckus or anything. Unless she has a land in hand, which would be surprising. She's been on 4 mana for a while. Just 4 mana here. Needs 5 for a Muxus. Gem Palm Incinerator cycling for 2. Takes out Baron. Muxus actually would be ridiculous. Matt pulling back into the game. First damage he's dealt. And now an Aluren combo to wrap it up. Recruiter of the Guard. I'm actually not entirely sure what that combo would have played out like with Baron in the graveyard. Would have needed to get an Eternal Witness, so he'll draw his entire deck. So Recruiter of the Guard will go get Cavern Harpy. Cavern Harpy with Euro will draw the rest of the deck. Presumably there'll be an Eternal Witness there as well. And, well, he doesn't actually need the Baron. He just needs to get to the point where he draws into the Cauldron Familiar. So yeah, he's totally good. These modern builds of Aluren take me a moment. I've seen a lot more of the older builds. And with this, yeah, you basically can just draw your entire deck till you draw the Cauldron Familiar. And then from there, Cavern Harpy is definitely going to end things. You've also drawn your entire deck, played all your lands, got all your Force of Wills in hand, so you can actually protect your Cauldron, not your Cauldron Familiar, your Cavern Harpy. Though if they could have stopped it, they would have anyways. So, yeah, I mean, it's pretty much just game over at that point. There's no lines that make any sense that your opponent's not going to be able to stop you before you start drawing. I mean, at that point, even something like a Sudden Shock is not going to be super effective because let's say that you kill the Cauldron Familiar thinking that you've got an answer. Reality is they can just make a food and bring it right back. They've got Gilded Goose. They have Okos. I mean, they can do whatever they want to be able to get a food into the battlefield. So really not in any way realistic to think that once they start comboing off, it's anything other than certain death. All right, this game jumping in here, we've got a Badlands for a Aether Vial that gets forced. And now a Gilded Goose off of Tropical Island for Matt. Gilded Goose capable of blocking Goblin Lackey and not dying, which is more than most mana dorks can say. Goblin Pile Driver. Pro Blue, potential for all sorts of damage, and Recruiter of the Guard. And this is a very nasty, unintended, or very intentional side effect of playing 4 Recruiter of the Guard. It makes your sideboard cards like Plague Engineer just straight up nasty, having just so much access to Plague Engineer versus tribal decks. And this is going to really require some type of response from Heather, either Goblin Crater Maker or multiple Goblins plus Gempalm Incinerator. I mean, this could be very, very bad. A Brainstorm, so Matt actually not going to be able to land the Plague Engineer this turn. Hopefully, for his sake, he draws a land and can hide this Plague Engineer on top of the library. Another Gilded Goose. And Thoughtseize out of Matt. Mostly a Bant deck, but it has that black splash. You've got Cauldron Familiar and some sideboard cards and Cavern Harpy as well. It's a little bit of black. And Thoughtseize giving Heather pause. I'm guessing she has Pyrokinesis and is considering whether or not to use it on these geese. And that is, in fact, what is going on. We've got a Munitions Expert clearing the geese and showing Pyroblast and a Wooded Foothills. So Heather going after the mana base, losing the Munitions Expert, and going to be living off the top of the deck here. Just one from Pile Driver. Chipping back and forth here. 1 damage per turn. Now Goblin Pile Driver hobbled by this Plague Engineer. He sends and Euro making the land drop, preparing his arrival next turn. And the Pro Blue on Goblin Pile Driver, I mean, you could call it a saving grace here, but I don't know that there's any saving to be done. This 6/6 Euro, a very real threat. Even with Pile Driver on board to block it indefinitely. Goblin Chain Whirler doing some damage. Clearing the Recruiter of the Guard, being huge. Oh, nice, and Munitions Expert, and now we've got a game. All right, so Plague Engineer's dead. We'll see how good Euro ends up being here. Pile Driver able to block and is much more comfortable with the situation now that he's got some teeth for the crackback. This 3 life per turn, not inconsequential, but it's not nearly as backbreaking as it would be with a Plague Engineer on board. Heather could have some massive turns here. Baron returning returning Recruiter of the Guard. Also getting a card draw out of it. So some real value. And at this point, I'm pretty well sold on Baron. There's a little bit of a drawback to him, but I think overall there's just so many upsides, and they're tangible upsides, actually drawing cards. And Heather turning sideways. And I'm not loving that attack. I am not. It's going to be really tough to outrace this Euro plus Baron. Unless I'm missing something, this feels very, very dangerous. It might be a misassignment of roles. Let's see if I'm reading it incorrectly, but offhand it feels like that Goblin Pile Driver can block Euro all day long, and that needs to be what you're doing here until you assemble something like Krenko. Or, I mean, she probably doesn't have Krenko anymore, but Muxus, for example. Pyrokinesis. And now a Gilded Goose. Yeah, even the Goblin Chain Whirler could have blocked Euro and then Pyrokinesis after to actually clear him for a little while. I mean, granted, he does just come right back, but he can't do it forever. Matt looks like he might be able to escape twice with a little bit more help. Pile Driver blocking. Ponder. Yeah, so he'd be able to escape him twice. So, I mean, maybe that's not really worth considering the value of forcing Matt to utilize his graveyard. And Oko making a food, and this is feeling pretty bad. It's what you get for saying he's not that crazy in this matchup. He shows up and literally just closes the door as that Plague Engineer just has too much backup. We've got Oko and Euro, Gilded Goose, making tokens that can easily be turned into an Elk army. And Aluren takes that one down with very little Aluren. That is all for this one, but don't worry, there is a lot more. You can check out our older videos, and we're always putting out new videos from ELD's Time Vault Games in Bellingham, Massachusetts. If you want to help the channel, of course, you can like, subscribe, share, tap that notification bell so you can know the next time our new videos come out. Thanks for watching.